welcome to our very special edition of the GI Jobs Get Hired Workshop. Today, we're going to focus on military spouses in the workforce. We're going to discuss the challenges they face and some resources to overcome them. So my name is Rachel Pitts. I am a GI Jobs employee and spouse of an active duty Marine. I am joined today by three truly amazing people, and they have dedicated their time and energy to improve the lives of military spouses through their various organizations. So I'll get started in introducing them. I actually had the pleasure of meeting Tracy Steele at the 2022 Military Spouse of the Year Awards earlier this year. And while neither of us were up for the award, Tracy certainly deserved it in my opinion. So she's a 19-year military spouse, and she has learned to leverage strategic volunteering opportunities and use that to transition careers. So now she takes that knowledge and she holds two titles. One is the Chief Operating Officer for the Council of Military Spouse Clubs, and the other is the Military Spouse Fellowship Program Manager for Hiring Our Heroes. So she helps military spouses realize their marketable skills and transition those into professional careers. So thanks for being here. And Tracy, you want to say a quick hello?
Yeah, thanks for having me. I'm really looking forward to this conversation. And I know there's a lot of chat going on the post that you had put out yesterday, I believe. And I know we have, our work cut out for us in this next hour to try and answer all the questions. But I know that this is a great group. It's going to be a great conversation.
Awesome. Yes, thank you so much for being here. Next up, the ever impressive Sue Hoppin. She is founder and president of the National Military Spouse Network. She genuinely has held more titles than I have time to cover in this introduction. So I strongly encourage you all to check out her bio after the workshop. She is a nationally recognized expert on all things military spouse and family related. She serves on several boards. She was appointed by the President Obama to serve on a board of the Visitors of the U.S. Air Force Academy. She's a published author, and her current efforts focus on supporting the professional career and entrepreneurial goals of military spouses. So Sue, welcome, and please say hello.
Thanks, Rachel. I really appreciate it. I'm really excited to join Tracy and Jennifer. When we had our little call, I'm like, this is awesome because everybody brings such a great perspective. So excited, and also really excited for the questions from the attendees. So I hope they'll be super active and, get active in that chat.
Yes, absolutely. If it's any indication of our conversations together, I think the military spouses in the chat will be talkative, which is a great thing. All right, so thank you for being here. And our final expert panelist is a woman who climbed the ladder so high they created another position for her. Jennifer Akin is the first Chief of Staff for Blue Star Families, and she is a national thought leader on military life issues, and she has led groundbreaking, first of its kind research diving into studying the unique experiences of military families, families of color specifically, COVID-19 resources, all of these amazing things that she has spearheaded. And she is, so in her current role, she is serving as a trusted advisor and partner to the CEO and executive teams as they lead the Blue Star families through an unnaturally high growth period. So thank you for being here, Jennifer. Would you like to say hello?
Thank you so much. I will echo Sue and Tracy. I'm really honored to be here and excited about the conversation. And I came to Blue Star Families because of military spouse employment issues. So it's kind of a personal passion of mine. We'll get into it a little bit later, but we've all been there, right? We're all military spouses. I've been told I didn't get a job because they weren't sure how long I would be there. Those kinds of things. So I'm excited to kind of tap into that passion point. And you've got a great panel. So
we do. I am very excited for today. So thank you all for being here. Before we jump into the questions, I do want to let our audience know that this Get Hired workshop is typically in preparation for the GI Jobs virtual job fair. That is 1 week from today. It'll be next Wednesday, August 31st. And we encourage you all to attend. It's noon to 4 Eastern time. So no matter what coast you're on, you should be able to make it. And I'll show you during a brief intermission how to register. So let's jump right in. So our first part is going to be talking about the challenges that we all face. A poll just popped up. If you could all take a second to just click which military affiliation you are. Spouse, active duty, or veteran, so we know who our audience is. Obviously, this one is geared towards military spouses, but everybody is welcome. All right. And I don't know if we're going to see the results right now. I will get them. I'll tell everybody what the results of that poll are here shortly. But let's jump into those challenges. So Jennifer, I'd like to start with you. Can you talk about employer discrimination? And like you mentioned, you weren't hired for certain positions because you identified as a military spouse. So what are the pros and cons of letting an employer know that that is your status?
Sure. Well, and before I get directly into that, I think it's just so that we all get on the same page about what are the general challenges, because military spouse employment is difficult because we're all interacting with this life that is military life. We may have to drop out of the workforce that can carry on to veteran life. So just time and time again in Blue Star Families research, we see that there are really a couple of things that always surface as barriers to employment. But those are the same things that sometimes make it difficult in the employment space and make us feel sometimes that we can be discriminated against, because employers are also aware of those barriers, right? So time and time again, we see childcare, we see lack of access to childcare, unaffordable childcare, but we also see service member job demands, and those can be day-to-day job demands, unpredictable schedules, and PCSing. So those kinds of things regularly circulate up to the top as barriers to employment. When we started asking about this employer discrimination piece, I think all of us on our team knew that we would find something, but we didn't necessarily understand how big the problem would be and what the full ramifications would be. So nearly half of our spouses have told, in our surveys, the respondents have told us that they felt discriminated against in hiring or promotion by an employer. And that's far lower than like the veteran population. And when we started inquiring about some of the impacts of that, you see that if you perceive that you've been discriminated against in your hiring or promotion, then you're also probably less likely to affiliate with the military in a future interview, right? So I know that we have lots of organizations and companies who want to have these military spouse hiring efforts, but you may have military spouses who are like, I'm not going to share my identity with you because I don't want to be discriminated against. So what are the pros and cons of affiliating? And I'll give kind of our perspective on this. We don't actually have a lot of research on this, so I'd love for some of my fellow panelists to jump into that conversation as well. But what we see in open-ended and focus groups is the pros are, at least if they still hire me, you know what, they know what I've got going on. They are going to be supportive of me. We went in on a really solid, trustworthy footing where I felt like I could be my full authentic self with my employer. Now, for me personally, that's important. It's not important to everybody, and they like to keep that piece of their identity kind of siphoned off. The cons to identifying are that being a military spouse is not really a protected class. It's only a protected class in the state of Virginia. And so, you know, an employer can discriminate against you based on your military affiliation. So I think historically there had been a conversation that, hey, it falls under marital status and you can't discriminate against people because they're married to a service member. But in reality, that hasn't held up in court. And so that's kind of where things stand on that. But again, we don't actually have research on the true pros and cons of affiliating. So it's more just what people have said in their open-ended responses anecdotally.
To tag on to what Jennifer was saying, one of the things that we talk about in our little group often is when military spouses are discriminated against because people don't want to hire a military spouse, we almost say you just dodged a bullet, because would you really want to work for an employer that is not military friendly? And I know that sounds a little bit cavalier, but it's kind of true, right? Because our lifestyles are not, I say our, but let's be generous, and my husband's retired, so this is you know, I'm just going to use the role. Our lifestyles are such that, you know, we don't have as much flexibility as other people, so we're going to start with an employer that doesn't understand that or appreciate or is willing to make any accommodations in terms of you know, you using the language of, I need to go to this mobility line, or I need to go pick up my child because my husband is, you know, thousands of miles away, or my wife is thousands of miles away. Then that's something that's kind of valuable, I think, for spouses. It can hurt sometimes to know that you're being discriminated against because you're a military spouse, but the silver lining is it's better to know up front.
Yeah, that's a great perspective. And certain jobs look for military spouses because of their skills and abilities, and we're so adaptable. So yeah, thank you for that. Let's move on to the next question. So Tracy, I'm going to throw this one to you. What is the best way to fill resume gaps? And what if they don't already have volunteer experience? And how would they best fill that?
Yeah, so I think the first thing to think about is the resume gap is actually a gap in pay for the most part with us military spouses. I mean, we, for the most part, are really active. We're always gaining experience. We're always learning. So really, it's just a gap in pay. So if you with that mindset, you got to look at your resume and put down all of your experience that you have on there. I will, like you had mentioned, introducing me, I was a nurse when I first met my husband, and I now specialize in workforce development. And then what got me there was volunteer work. So I can offer some tips that have worked for me and has worked for a lot of other people, both civilian and military affiliated. And one is the strategic volunteering. And I didn't start off strategically volunteering, I just volunteered. A lot of us, as you move to all the different duty stations, the way you meet your people, your new tribe, is you just jump in, you volunteer, join a military spouse club, whatever it is. And oftentimes we're the secretary or you're the treasurer, whatever it is, you get in, but that is experience that should be put on your professional resume. Once I started learning how to translate that, and those are really professional skills, I started then thinking more strategically and choosing roles that were in line with where I wanted to go with my career. So that kind of chalked my whole resume that way. Another really fun tip to add onto your resume to fill gaps is join professional associations and organizations. So your Chamber of Commerce, that's one way to go. For me, I was, like I said, nurse to workforce development. So I started joining the resume and career coaching associations and started taking their webinars and ended up earning a certification. So I have that on my resume. It also builds your professional network. So volunteer work, if you're taking on different roles that are in your line that you want to go for your career, you're developing that professional network that's going to help you down the road. And with military spouses, we're all over the world, right? So you have a global network. So that's really important. The other huge key is professional development. And I think that most of us spouses are probably not sitting home and only on our phones scrolling through social media. So we're reading things, and there's ways to get into your professional development and be an avid learner. So with Hiring Our Heroes, we have Career Forward. You can go through certificate programs, add that onto your resume. There's so many other free no cost, programs that you can get certifications, attend webinars. So other fun tips that I've had for resumes, like if you see a job description that they require you to have no Salesforce experience, go to LinkedIn Learning and take a course on Salesforce. And then you have that to put down in your professional development section, and you're building a resume that is all in line with the job that you're trying to, apply for. So there's lots of free ways to be filling your time when you're not getting paid to be working, that you could be filling your professional resume. And I also want to say that give yourself grace if that maybe right now is not the time for you to be working. I know that in the survey that a lot of people were saying that like they can't find a job that's going to cover their childcare costs. Well, you are the childcare then. So maybe that is okay right now. I mean, I had a 9-year pay gap, and that was mainly because my husband was deploying. We were moving every year. There were reasons that it made sense financially for us that I filled that gap for us. But I stayed current, I stayed relevant by being volunteering in my professional development. So that's what I encourage. And I know that most of us military spouses do it. They just have to figure out how to capture that on their professional resume.
That is amazing insight, Tracy. Thank you so much. I really love that suggestion of staying current. So finding a position that you want, like a specific job description or even just a career field, and staying current on those is amazing advice. So if you don't already have volunteer experience, that's something you could do at your own time while you maybe beef up your resume with some other volunteering. Jennifer, did you have something to add?
I did. I think for a long time, me as a spouse, I would hear that like you should be volunteering and filling those resume gaps. And I would almost have like a visceral reaction, like I deserve it. And you do deserve to get paid for your labor and all of that. But for those spouses who may have that same knee-jerk reaction that I had for many years, The cold hard truth is that computer algorithms will write your resume out of the system and you won't even get eyes on it if you don't have something in there to try and plug those resume gaps. So it's completely fine if you talk to a lot of recruiters to take time out of the workforce, but the computer algorithm doesn't necessarily agree with what the recruiter says. And the average amount of time that most computer algorithms kick in is between 7 and 9 months. So if you're going to be out of the labor force, especially more than that period of time, you should really look at some of the great suggestions that Tracy had to fill in those gaps, simply so that when you want to re-enter the labor force, there's not a computer telling you shouldn't. But that's my personal piece.
That's really great insight too.
To add on that too, I mean, I completely agree. And when you tailor your resume for any position, you do have to find those keywords for that exact reason. So like I said, you find ways to be able to put, authentically put those words that, you really did fulfill that, requirement. And for me, you can't tell on my resume whether I was paid for the job or not paid for the job. I mean, I've had some volunteer roles where I'm meeting with mayors, I'm coordinating different things, I'm managing major budgets. So that is professional work. And so, when Hiring Our Heroes saw that in me, and I had previous jobs before that. So I think that you need to capture it as professional experience and then own that story and own your stories and know that you can tap into them when you're showing that you meet those requirements for that job and that they're going to want to hire you.
Yeah, that's awesome. Very good advice, everyone. All right, let's move on to the next question. So I'm going to hand this one to Jennifer. What advice would you offer regarding childcare availability, cost, anything, the obstacle of childcare? Let's go with that.
Yeah, so my number one recommendation, if you are in the process of trying to figure out how childcare is going to work, especially if you're trying to re-enter the labor force or PCSing or anything else, if you are not aware of not just militarychildcare.com and the CDCs, but also Child Care Aware of America. They are a fantastic resource. They are partnered with the service branches. They've got navigator tools, and you can basically get subsidized childcare, what you would pay at the CDC if you're not able to get childcare through the CDC. Now, it's not always perfect. Nothing is perfect. No resource is perfect or will reach everybody, but it is a really good one to get spun up on if you're not aware of it already. The other one is Sitter City. So the Department of Defense launched Sitter City memberships, which is you can basically go on and do a search for babysitters or nannies in the area if you aren't ready to commit to like a full-time daycare center or something like that. So those are two resources that I'm trying to make more people aware of, because so many people, even within my own circle, aren't familiar with them and would have used them and saved a lot of money using them, especially Child Care Aware, if they had been aware. So push it out to your networks too. Tell everybody you know.
Yeah, those are great resources. Thanks. We had a question in the chat from Kayla. It says, is there a place that you'd recommend that does virtual or remote volunteer work? I have 4 kids, so I don't have a lot of free time outside the house, but I do feel like I have free time during the day and night when her kids are napping or in school. Sue, did you have something to add to this question, or were you wanting to add on to Jennifer's topic?
No, I was actually looking at Kayla's question.
Okay, perfect.
I am one of those people who cannot help herself and says yes to everybody. Volunteers are very hard to come by. And so they do not care that you have to do it virtually, remote, whatever. They're just happy for your time. And if you are looking to work on the installation, Kayla, I would just contact the organizations directly and tell them that you're happy to volunteer with them. You have limited bandwidth. You need something that will allow you to work on your timetable. But I would encourage you to kind of open up your aperture and look in the local community. And I know in Fairfax County, we have a community bank, like a Fairfax County match system, where you go to the you go to the point of contact and they connect you to organizations that are looking for people with your interests. And I think that'd be a really great place to start, but don't feel like you having to work remotely is a limiting factor. They do not care. They're just happy to have your time and skills.
Definitely. Yes. Everybody, I think, is feeling a shortage these days. And we'll get those links that Jennifer mentioned in the chat to everyone. So I think, yep, she's putting them in there right now. So you guys will have those if anybody is dealing with childcare challenges. All right, and our next question is for Tracy. So you mentioned your husband being deployed for several of the years that you guys had kids and limited availability to work. So what advice would you provide for spouses who are dealing with that?
So for me personally, during that time, like I said, it was the right decision for us to not be working, and I instead invested my time into the military community and family team building, and military spouse clubs is kind of what I did, and continue to grow professionally. But the applicants and candidates that I get to work with now with Hiring Our Heroes, a lot of those spouses are needing to have flexible remote jobs. And so that is what we're trying to help place them right now. So a lot of them have, these incredible backgrounds of education, or some of our previous veterans and now military spouses. And so they have the incredible backgrounds there, or they've been spouses that kind of got started, got paused because of all the moves or having kids, and now they're trying to get their foot in the door. And so the Military Spouse Fellowship Program helps try to place those spouses that are career-minded, career-ready spouses in the workforce right now. And so we line them up with employers that are military spouse friendly and that are actively seeking to hire military spouses. So we already have a soft place for them to go to, but most of them are flexible and they know that we're military spouses and need to have flexible hours. So I would suggest everybody checking out Hiring Our Heroes, because I know all the incredible programs that we have that do offer that. There are other fellowship programs that we offer that are the Career Forward and also Salesforce that are certificate programs that will then lead to remote roles. And then there's a whole slew of other companies that are remote work, instant teams, there's plenty of different ones, and we can probably start, I can try and throw out some in the chat later, but lots of different remote opportunities that provide flexible work. For me, when I moved back, I lived overseas, I was able to find part-time work, and thanks to the pandemic, one good thing, it did have to be remote, and they completely pivoted their program to remote work. So for me, I was able to negotiate part-time hours and flexible hours. I was still able to take my kids to where they needed to go to. So I think back to what we were talking about earlier, like if you find a soft place to land, if you look for companies that are happy to have military spouses and are actively recruiting, and there are a lot of them there. So I think join, the network of all these organizations that are trying to help military spouses, and we will help partner you or, with military spouse friendly organizations that want to hire you.
Yeah, that's really great. If you could put those links to Hiring Our Heroes and any of the other resources, just throw those in the chat. That'd be amazing. And like you said, a soft landing is the best of both worlds, because the companies are getting to give you the skills and then hopefully you transition straight into it. So really great opportunity. All right, let's move to another question. Sue, this one is for you. Everyone's free to chime in. But one of the main challenges that we got feedback on from our military spouse poll was that PCSing every 3 years is a real deal breaker when you're trying to build a career. So it's kind of like you have to start over every 3 years. So Sue, what advice would you give, or do you have any resources on overcoming that challenge?
Oh, so many, and mostly from hindsight. I'm kind of like every other military spouse out there, especially like Tracy, because I did not start in workforce development issues or military spouse employment issues. I kind of found my way to them, or they found their way to me. I have bachelor's and a master's in international relations, which I don't know that can be any further removed from what we're doing right now. But and I have a background in nonprofits, but I also stayed home to raise our son for 14 years because we had decided that when we had our child that one of us was going to stay home. Clearly it wasn't going to be my spouse. So I stayed home. And then when he was ready to go to school, we were overseas for 2 years, and then we were governed by SOFAs, and there was no opportunity. And by the time we got back to the States, he was 14 or 12, and and it was just one of those things where I had to learn all this in hindsight. And I don't know why I thought that I would be more eligible for a job as a 30 or 40-year-old to start than I was as a 20-year-old. And so I think what I would tell my 18, 19, 20-year-old self was stop putting my career on a 3-year timeline and then redoing it every 3 years. And instead think of your career on a longer term timeline, like a 20-year timeline, because it's really difficult to know where you're headed if you don't know what your final destination is. So I think even if you have to take several pivots and zig and zag, it's helpful to know where you want to be in 20 years. And it's not evergreen, right? You make adjustments every year, but it's good to know what your goal is, because when you face that goal, then you could recognize, okay, if my goal is to be a lawyer and to sit on in a corner office on K Street in Washington, D.C., then I know that, we probably need to find a way to get back to the district, right? And that's a communication that I need to pass along to my spouse, that's something we need to work on. But then also in the back of my mind, I also recognize that that's probably not very portable. But if my goal as an attorney is to help people in the practice of law, then that tells me that maybe I adjust my goal and then I can work toward a portable career for all 20 years. So it's really difficult to have that come to Jesus moment with yourself where you really look at what you want to do in 20 years, because I know I did not do that. So I was very frustrated with my spouse. I was very angry with my spouse because it felt like every single PCS was taking me further and further away from what I wanted to do, when the reality was I didn't know what I wanted to do. And again, I know I have the wisdom of hindsight in saying that, but I would encourage everyone to think of your career in a longer term timeline. The other one is to plan for PCSs, TDYs, and deployments instead of treating them like emergencies. We know they're going to occur. Unless you're those unicorns whose spouse is in a career field that doesn't require TDYs or deployments. First of all, I want to know who you are. Like, just own up to us and tell us what field that is, because we all want to know, right? My husband was operational. He was deployed constantly. He was not stable. I think we joked that when we were stationed in Kansas, our son and I lived there for 3 years. He lived there for 180 days. So that was our reality. And so we had to plan for those deployments and TDYs and understand that it wasn't, like Tracy and Jennifer, it wasn't a great time for me to work because I couldn't afford the childcare. We would have been paying all the time in childcare. So I went back to school. The other one, and this is more for today's spouse, is stay aware of your resources, because I think that as a current military spouse, you're going to wear several different hats during the course of your service members' service, right? Sometimes you're going to be working for the federal government, but then you're going to go to a small town where there might not be a big presence, or you're going to go overseas and realize you can't. Sometimes you're going to be working for a corporation that doesn't have, an outlet where you are. So you might find yourself starting your own business. So it's really important to stay engaged and to know all those resources. I know we're running short on time, so I will run these through really quick. Like Tracy said, sometimes when working doesn't make sense, think about strategic volunteering. And Jennifer mentioned this as well. Think about continuing education or professional development. Like everyone, I think, needs to understand, if you don't understand the whole Microsoft suite, you're already at a detriment. That's a baseline expectation that everyone has. And social media is the same way. And I kind of think they kind of want us all to be a little bit of a data scientist, to be able to analyze information coming in. So when you have downtimes where you can't work, that's a great time to pick up another skill, right? And a lot of these skills are available for free through DoD programs and partner programs. So this is really great to know. And then more practically, for everyone who's going into the career fair this later on, you need to network and you need to maintain those networks consistently. I'm talking, you need to be feeding those networks constantly, make connections for people, update your resumes, update your LinkedIn, keep everything up to date and work those networks like it's your job, because it really is, right? It's the only thing that's going to carry you through the PCSs. Seek out mentors and sponsors. There's a difference between mentors and sponsors. And if you don't know, I'm happy to explain it to you. We also have something about it on MSN. We can refer you to that. And finally, do good work. If you do good work, you'll get recognized and you'll find other opportunities. Like I said, I started very far from where I am today in terms of the field that I thought I would be in. And a lot of I wish I could say that I was very strategic and I knew exactly what I was going to do to get to those boards. And it wasn't. It was really just someone recognizing that I had a voice that needed to be represented at these tables, and they put me at those tables. And so I think if you do good work, stay up to date, stay humble, and stay hungry, you'll be not just fine, but a little bit better off.
Wow, I'm so glad that this is recorded, because I'm going to go back and write all of that down. That was amazing advice. Thank you so much. And one thing I just wanted to add on to that is I love the idea of the 20-year plan. I have commitment issues, I will say, not like relationship wise with my husband or anything, but that seems like a very strong solid commitment. So if somebody is struggling with that, I would encourage you to have that 20-year plan and then adjust it in whatever smaller chunk increments. So like, I think 6 months is a great way to start because it keeps you focused. And then going more, every 6 months, where are you in that in direction towards that 20-year goal? And if you need to shift the 20-year goal at that point, then that's something that can be manageable. So that's really, really good advice. Thank you, Sue. All right, so I think it is time for our intermission. So I am going to share my screen. You ladies can have a break, take a sip of water. Let me see here, I'll share my screen. Okay, so this is where if you would like to participate in our virtual job fair, you will come to gijobs.com. I'm fairly certain this is also linked on militaryspouse.com, but this is the majority of where our audience comes through. So you're just going to click on reserve your ticket right there, and it is free. You're not paying for anything. Then you'll come here and it'll show you the countdown. So we have just under 7 days left. You'll click on reserve your ticket again, and then you'll be taken to Brazen, where you can either register, or if you've participated in one of these events before, you can sign up and then you'll complete your registration. So it's very basic information, but this information is what's going to be shown to potential employers. So for headline, you can put your current role or job title that you'd like to see. You can say something like your next job title, just to make yourself look more eager and excited. Basic information on where you're located. Are you willing to relocate? Maybe if you are a military spouse and you can't relocate, you'll say no there. Update or upload a resume. And for this one, somebody mentioned a functional resume. Obviously, you're going to custom tailor a resume for a specific position when you apply. But this resume is going to be side by side with your face when you chat with someone, an employer. So make sure that it's got all of your skills, all of your volunteer, all of your network, all of your experience right there, and easy to read for those employers so they can see it right there while they talk to you. As Sue mentioned, keep an up-to-date LinkedIn profile. So make sure that you've got that up-to-date and linked in here. Enter your specific information, education, expertise, all of these things. How long did you serve if you were military? Are you interested in furthering your education or franchising? You can voluntarily self-identify if you have a teaching certification or nursing license, any of these things, you're welcome to put those in. If you enter a mobile number, you'll get SMS reminders of the event that's coming up. And then the great part about this platform is that as soon as you register, you can check out the employees. So you can add it to your calendar here so you don't forget, and then you can enter the event and see all of the employees that are available that are in this event. So you can go in and take a look and decide, okay, Ashley Furniture, well, I don't really want to sell furniture, but maybe I could work in their management or some other field that they have. So you can check out their job boards, look at why they value veterans. All of the information is in here. And then, so once you've had a chance to take a peek at all of these different employers, then when you come back the day of the event, you'll have an idea of which positions you're interested in. You'll have a more productive conversation with those employers, and they will be impressed that you research the company, research the job position, read the job description, and let them know how you fit into it. So really do your research on the company that you're interested in, and that way you can stand out amongst people who hadn't taken the initiative to come in early and do their research. So, and then on the day of the event, when you enter the booth, there'll be a big, pretty green chat button here, but it's not available until the event actually starts. And that's where you're going to go in to chat with someone. The employer may ask you to come up on video and have a more productive video chat. Otherwise, it might just be a text chat back and forth. So that is how you sign up for the virtual job fair. And fun fact, I'm a military spouse and I was hired through this virtual job fair through GI Jobs. So I know it is successful. All right. So I think we will put the link to this website in the chat so you guys can go ahead and get registered after the workshop. And let's move right into our second part where we focus on resources and benefits. So this portion, I'm going to really turn it over to our panelists to let loose and give us all you got. So let's start with Sue with some government resources. You're on mute. Sorry.
Sorry about that. I was actually just answering Peggy Jo's question in the chat, in the Q&A. There are a lot of government resources, and I'm going to touch on that one in a minute. But, you know, I don't know if you guys all heard the same thing when the White House came out and said that the federal government really want to be the employer of choice for military spouses. To me, that was exciting because that kind of opened the door for us to have bigger expectations of, you know, them and following through with that. So I would encourage you guys to look at your government resources. Let's start with DoD, right? The spousal preference that Peggy Jo was asking about. That's a tough one. And I would caveat this with the cautionary tale being, make sure you understand who's eligible, what you're eligible for, and when you're eligible. And I think this is where Peggy Jo had questions, because she's like, I don't even understand any of that. And I don't know who can tell me that. So I sent along to Edgar over at GI Jobs a link at OPM, which is a fantastic resource because they have all the FAQs there about eligibility. And the other person that I would contact as potential expert is also any of the spouse employment people on the installations. This is what they do, either on the installations or through Military OneSource. They should be able to answer those questions definitively for you, for your situation. Other DoD resources, the MyCAA account for military spouses who are eligible, it provides $4,000 for free training toward certifications or programs that we were talking about, or associate's degrees that will help you find a job. There's Military Spouse Employment Partnership, MSEP, which is a collection of all the employers that have identified themselves to DoD as being military spouse friendly, and they list their jobs through the MSEP portal, and they specifically are looking for military spouses. So when you talk about identifying yourself as a military spouse, they want you, they're looking for you. DoD also provides reimbursement for licenses and certifications for eligible folks. So I know that all of us here who require licenses and certification have an extra burden of having to pay for those every time you PCS. So don't forget that you're eligible for reimbursement. And then there are other benefits through DoD, such as, you know, reimbursement for like your goods and your household goods for professional gear. So just make sure you're up to date on all of those. So DoD holds the majority of military spouse benefits in the government, but there are other agencies that you should really look at. You are going to see, you know, in our most recent white paper, we actually have a chart. If you go there, we link everybody that has a resource for military spouse and link to their program. So I think that's easier than trying to illustrate each single one of them here and watch my panelists like kind of glaze over. Tracy and Jennifer probably like, I know all this, I don't need to hear it. But like some of the major ones, Veterans Affairs, right? The VA, GI Bill transferability. If you're not eligible for MyCA, don't forget that in addition to nonprofits that have, you know, scholarships for you, that GI Bill transferability is a good option for you, because they, you know, if you're in a situation for where your spouse can transfer their GI Bill benefits to you, that's a way for you to finish your education or get additional education. Department of Labor has a Teams workshops to help transitioning spouses. SBA has Boots to Business to help you on your entrepreneurial route. So don't neglect your federal benefits, and don't just look at DoD when you're looking at benefits. I think that's it for now.
That's great. Yeah, no, awesome resources. I think Edgar's keeping up with you, putting them in the chat for everybody. Yeah, he's really good at what he does. All right. And we do have a question from Calvin. He's wondering, does the term military spouse cover only active duty, or are spouses of veterans included in that as well? What would you guys say to that?
So it depends. And this is one of my, this is the craziest thing to me, is that we're not all using the same lexicon. It depends on who you're talking to, and it's not consistent even among nonprofits, even among government agencies. So Calvin, you ask a really great question. And what I would encourage you is, when you're looking at a resource or benefit, you're gonna have to look at every single person and providing that benefit to see what they mean when they say military spouse. I wish I had a better
Mhm.
answer for you.
Yeah, it is. I think it's very, it varies great widely across. You call me
Also, I know
military spouse.
Hiring Our Heroes, we specifically serve all military spouses, whether you're a vet spouse like me now, military spouse, we even can serve divorced spouses as well. So if you ever served as a military spouse, Hiring Our Heroes looks to support you. But to Sue's point, I have found that there's some services that I've, looked into and I don't qualify anymore because I'm a vet spouse. So you do have to read between the lines in a lot of things. And also, can I add back, also, Sue was talking about different financial benefits. So look to your military spouse clubs too, that wherever you're locally stationed, because most are philanthropic organizations, nonprofits, and they will have scholarship programs where they help, any military dependent, which a lot of times are the spouses, for any certifications and continuing education.
Yeah, great information. And with that, Tracy, let's go right into your section. You were going to discuss private sector resources.
Well, and so I know we were going to kind of focus on LinkedIn, and we touched a little bit on it before too, also about all the different companies that are military spouse friendly and are really looking to hire military spouses. So I encourage tapping into networks like Hiring Our Heroes, and there's lots of us like this we're doing the groundwork, trying to find those companies, those private companies, and bringing those jobs and partnering them with military spouses. So I really, really encourage you to become part of our network. But I really wanted to focus also on LinkedIn, because if you're not on LinkedIn, you need to be on LinkedIn. So all military spouses should be able to get a free year of LinkedIn Premium. And I think that it was already dropped in the chat on how to get there. You can also go through Military One Source. I think it's the MySeco, and they'll take you through a certification little class, and then you can get the 1 year. And I believe you can also get it every time you PCS. I'm not sure if they've changed that, but the benefits of getting on LinkedIn Premium is mainly like their LinkedIn learning. So you can do any webinar, like we were saying, Microsoft 365, you should all be up to speed on. Put that in your search bar and you can take a webinar on that. And then you're going to be more up to speed. I use that trick when I needed to have Salesforce on my resume, and I was able to put that on my resume. But with that, you can do job searches. And so you can start putting in creative job searches. So say you want to be a marketing coordinator and you really love animals, you can tailor your search to that. You can make it remote only, or you could put in a specific location. And so then you're going to get job alerts, maybe even daily, but you'll get them regularly. And then you read through those, and then you start to get to know those job postings too. And then you start to see, okay, that really piques my interest. So then you're going to start, what do I need to do to be able to be qualified for that? And then you're going to go back to your professional development and try and start building your resume that way. And then the other thing is it's really there to build your network. So, feel free to look me up on LinkedIn. If your profile says you're a military spouse, and especially if you're looking for a career, I'm going to connect with you. So try and connect with more and more like-minded people. And so that's how I grew my network. I started partnering with people that were where I wanted to be. I knew I wanted to work for Hiring Our Heroes. So I continued to reach out and network with more and more people at Hiring Our Heroes. I was really intrigued by workforce development. So I continued to search out my network and add those into my LinkedIn. And you can also follow people on LinkedIn. And if you are a little bit nervous and you don't want to put that little connect request to people, you can follow them, and you're going to that's going to populate your news feed and give you information that is going to continue to prompt you to maybe other webinars you could take, or another organization that you're interested in. Follow the companies that you might be interested in, and you're going to be up to speed and remain relevant and current with everything that's going on. So I can't stress highly enough to get yourself on LinkedIn.
For sure. Yes. I really like that. It goes back to Sue talking about finding mentors as well. So one thing I did want to drop in a link for Veterati for mentoring, but that's through LinkedIn. And somebody asked if you can get a premium account if you already have a regular account. And yes, so just follow that same link. But veterati.com goes through LinkedIn, and it connects experienced military spouses and veterans with those looking for a mentor. So it just kind of takes the awkwardness of, hey, will you be my mentor? Kind of like the Are You My Mother little book. And it just provides a valuable resource. And you can speak to multiple people through that as well. So thank you so much for that, Tracy. Let's move on to nonprofits. Jennifer, take it away.
Thanks, Rachel. So nonprofit sector really has two big things to offer anybody looking for a job right now. And the first one is just practical individual skill stuff. So there you can see the deluge of fire hosed information on resources in the chat. There are a lot of military spouse resources out there that are designed to help you get back into the workforce, clean up your resume, find a good mentor, learn all of these things. We have to use them as a community in order to keep them, because somebody has to pay for them and an organization has to justify that they're working. So please take the time, even if you are using them, to fill out the surveys or tell your story. Do those things if they're working for you, because otherwise that funding could go away if the organization or can't prove that it's working. And we'll get into all of our own organization stuff here in a second. But the other piece is the tremendous amount of advocacy that nonprofits are doing on your behalf that you may not be aware of, and you can be aware of it and you can help support it, because that will help be what addresses some of the systemic problems. So for example, for a long time, nonprofits and advocacy groups like Blue Star Families and MOA and NMFA, and I know, Sue, you're not a nonprofit, but these groups in Hiring Our Heroes have all been advocating for things like flexible spending accounts that service members can use to help cover the cost of childcare. They've been advocating for a work opportunity tax credit to incentivize employers to hire military spouses. We've advocated for and gotten now a study to look at employer discrimination. Like, these types of things are moving forward, and organizations like ours couldn't do it if you didn't do things like take surveys, which are not fun, but they're so important. They help all of us move our work forward. They couldn't do it if you're not willing to step up and share your story if you have a successful one, especially coming out of some of those programs. But the reality is that when many of us go to speak with people who can make change, they want that story as much as they want that stat. And so whenever you're engaging in those kinds of activities, you're not just helping yourself, but you're helping the whole spouse community, because the fact is military spouse unemployment rate has not significantly changed since 2012. And so, every single time there's turnover, like, it's just a constant process. Every PCS, you might become unemployed again. So that rate is just hard to chip away. So we don't just have to maintain, we have to gain, right? And so just buying into that collective advocacy and just participating for yourself and your other military spouse friends and future military spouses is really important and beneficial way to pay it forward.
Yeah, thank you so much. That was a lot of information. I love it. And I'm totally with you on the surveys being not fun, but very beneficial. And I mean, sometimes they're therapeutic. So, it's like good to get all your thoughts out there without your spouse being like worried that their CEO or CO is gonna see it and they're gonna get in trouble. Mine's always telling me not to talk to anybody higher ranking than him. But all right, thank you so much. All right, so now we're going to move in, and I'm just going to allow each lady to take a little bit of time and talk about their specific organization and what those organizations are doing for us military spouses. Let's start with Sue. You're up first.
So much, Rachel. So as Jennifer was talking about, a lot of what we do right now that gets the most attention is our advocacy. I think the only people who don't know this is anybody who's been in Iraq, because we're so loud about it, right? Since for the past 5 years, we've been releasing these white papers, and we made 3 to 5 recommendations every year that would really move the needle in spouse employment. And it's been really gratifying that every recommendation that requires policy change has been introduced as potential legislation. And we were able to get the military spouse survey and study into last year's NDAA, and they'll be reporting out on that by the end of this year. And that is going to require DOD to talk about the challenges to military spouse employment and what they're going to do to mitigate that, which is really exciting, I think, because the last comprehensive survey and report that was done was in 2004. You guys, 2004, right? So like all these programs are being formulated on information that is really outdated. for the past 3 years, we've been working on the WOTC, as Jennifer mentioned, the Work Opportunity Tax Credit, because we started working on this with Congressman Carter when I was at another organization almost 20 years ago, when he recognized that military spouses should also have the benefit of veterans, which is employers should be incentivized to hire us, right? And so in the 116th Congress, I think we finished off with 62 bipartisan co-sponsors, which we thought was really great, because in that kind of environment, right, where nothing's getting done, we were able to get bipartisan co-sponsors. Well, we were able to get it reintroduced in the 117th, and we have over 200 co-sponsors now. And we have a companion bill in the Senate, and that is also bipartisan, and it has over 33 Senate co-sponsors. So we could not have done that without the community, because that's a lot of spouses coming alongside of us during our day of advocacy to visit a lot of offices, to thank them for their support and to encourage them to support, right? Like, we sometimes think that we're not at these tables, but a lot of times we're not at these tables because we're not putting ourselves there. Like, they need to hear that I'm a military spouse, but I'm also your constituent, and I care about this issue, and you should really support it. And it seems like when they do hear, they get on and support. So we're really proud to be able to rally spouses around advocacy and to get them to advocate for themselves. And it's very effective. We're helping spouses with the SOFA and the WOTC issue, and also the DEDO issue overseas. So we're working for our OCONO spouses. We also host weekly Straight Talk Lives every Monday at noon. So join us there on Facebook Live. We have a digital magazine that is absolutely free of military spouse resources. You can sign up for that on our website. And we're going to be hosting a military spouse career summit, our 12th, I believe, in October. So we hope you can join us for that. Thanks for the opportunity. And it's been so fun chatting with Tracy, Jennifer, and Rachel. This is really fun.
Yes, thank you so much for being here. And that is amazing, all the headway that you guys are making. So you said that you guys are being loud about it, and I congratulate you. Keep it up. All right, Tracy, tell us a bit more about Hiring Our Heroes and the military spouse, the Council for Military
Spouse Club. Yeah, so the Council for Military Spouse Clubs. So we are actually a 501c3 nonprofit that began back in January of 2021. So we're relatively new. We are a global board. We literally have people all over the world, from Italy to Guam, Japan. We're everywhere. And so what we're trying to do is provide a guidance and support for military spouse clubs so that they can thrive and survive in the current world right now we live. So if you are looking for a military spouse club, I recommend checking out Council for Military Spouse Clubs, and we have a whole database of like over 400 military spouse clubs and gift shops and thrift shops worldwide. So we can help partner you, or pair you up with where you might have a local place to land. I know that they're always looking for volunteers. So if you are looking for strategic volunteering opportunities and even remote opportunities, we can help connect you there as well. We have a big push for professional development within the Council for Military Spouse Clubs now, so we have some information on that. So you can be an individual member of the council as well if you want to get information from there. You don't have to be a member of a spouse club to be a part of us. And then separately, Hiring Our Heroes. So I wanted to talk about Amplify. Amplify is a 2-day intensive workshop for spouses. And so they're actually in Colorado Springs right now, but there'll be a virtual one at the end of September. You have a 1-hour session that you can have with a mentor, but it's all for career, forward-looking military spouses. So really great networking there. And then my program is a military spouse fellowship program. And, I touched on it a little bit before, but reach out to me if you're interested. We're currently in 8 locations throughout the country. We're hoping by the end of the early next year to expanding it to nationwide and having a lot more remote roles for people. But we help get you placed with a fellowship, 6 weeks paid fellowship, and then on to employment there. So Hiring Our Heroes has tons of resources. I really encourage you to check that out. We could go on and on, right? And all of our different organizations. So I know Jennifer, I would love for her to be able to speak on her network.
Yeah, thank you so much. That's really cool. I didn't realize that it was a paid internship. So that's great to know.
No, I didn't either. It's like, oh, that's kind of cool.
Yeah.
See, you learn even from each other on these things. So Blue Star Families is also a 501c3 nonprofit. It's actually the largest chapter-based nonprofit for military families in the country. So kind of wherever you go, you've got Blue Star Families to land where you're going. And the employment piece is just one piece of what we do. And so I'll highlight some of that, deeper dive into that in a moment. But just generally, if you're looking for an organization that kind of follows you along with this whole military lifestyle across the whole continuum of what that military life entails, Blue Star Families might be a really good fit for you. So check us out. We've got chapters nationwide. We've got Blue Star Welcome Week coming up soon, which is like a nationwide effort to welcome the 600,000 military families that move every year, get them connected into their communities more quickly, because we believe that military families should have a sense of belonging in their local communities, and that helps make life just generally easier. So the employment stuff specifically, we really do a handful of things with employment. One, I talked some about the research. We've got ongoing research all the time through our military family lifestyle survey. We are also conducting a longitudinal study on military spouse employment through our military spouse employment initiative. So more to come on that, really looking at what works to PCS proof all of these things, like what works to maintain that career. We also have Spouse Force. So Spouse Force, many of you may know actually Laura Torres. She's very active on social media. She is a guru on this. And Spouse Force has a couple of things that are pretty unique about it and maybe a good fit for you. Specifically, we have launched in the past year and a half some programming for bilingual spouses. So our research showed us that Latina spouses in particular had the worst employment outcomes of all of the groups in census data and looking at both employment rates and earnings. So Laura is herself a Latino woman, and she stood up this, and it has been a tremendously popular and successful initiative. So that's just something that's unique to us in particular. But we also do ongoing webinars, have meet and greets with employers, do some recruiting events and that kind of thing. So I think earlier, Mr. GI Jobs dropped a link in the chat to Spouse Force, but that'll be in there as well. And again, on the advocacy side of the house, we are working to try and make life easier for military families. We think that military life can be awesome, and we try to clear barriers to make that happen. In my policy priority right now, at least that I'm bequeathing to my team as I transition out of the policy world, is to try and get student loan deferment. So that's going to be like our next thing. Like if you PCS, you should be able to defer your loans if you have to leave a job, and then pick them up down the road, so that if your family takes that hit to your income, that you can recover from it, and again, it isn't financially devastating to you. So more to come on that, hopefully.
Yeah, thank you so much, Jennifer. I really like that addition of, we're sitting here talking about all the challenges of being a military spouse. So really, I mean, I wouldn't trade it for anything. I think we're all strong individuals, and, given these resources to support us just in the situations that we're in, it is overall, to me, a wonderful life. So thank you for that perspective. All right, so we have one more minute. If anybody has any questions to throw in the chat. I don't know if I missed any. Let's see, somebody. Let me go back, sorry, right down here. You guys see any that I missed? I'm seeing a lot of resources here again. So, yeah. Elizabeth Castro's here, hey. Can I get the name of the lady who works with Latina military spouse community? Who would that be? Is there a specific person, Jennifer? I know, is there a specific person within Blue Star Families, or would that be you?
I'm dropping her email address in the chat.
Sweet, thank you.
And here, I'm gonna put mine in there in case that doesn't work.
Okay, thank you. All right, and I still have student loans too, girl. But $10,000 less, I think, from today. Will this recording be posted? Yes, it will be on both Military Spouse Facebook and GI Jobs Facebook. So our company hosts both websites and publications, Military Spouse and GI Jobs. So you can find it on both places. And then will you be able to access all these links? So the chat itself will be closed, Kayla, but if you'd like to just send me your direct email, I can get that out. Or I think we have everybody registered. So we can just send all of the resources out to everyone that registered for this webinar. So expect that coming from either myself or GI Jobs General. So, all right, well, that is our time. Thank you all so much for being here. And I really appreciate the time and the information. And I look forward to seeing you all in our virtual job fair next Wednesday. Have a good one, everybody.